Okay, here's a wild thought for you. What if I told you that some of the freest people on Earth are actually behind bars, and that a lot of us, walking around free as a bird, are actually living in invisible prisons we've built for ourselves? It's this incredible paradox, and it gets right to the core of what true freedom really is.
So for this explainer, we're diving deep into the work of Habtom Araya. His book, Freedom Beyond the Prison Walls, is just filled with these powerful, eye-opening stories from his time teaching some of the most inspiring people you could ever imagine.
And this is the single idea that just completely stopped me in my tracks. Araya saw firsthand that some people, even though they were physically locked up, had this kind of mental and spiritual freedom that so many of us on the outside have somehow lost. It's a statement that just turns our whole concept of freedom completely upside down.
Which, of course, leads us to the big question we're going to try and unpack today. What even is true freedom? Is it just not having physical walls around you? Or is it something way deeper, something that happens entirely inside our own heads? Let's dig into the stories Araya shares and find out.
Okay, let's jump right into the first story because it illustrates this paradox perfectly.
So get this. Back in 2014, Araya taught the exact same accounting course in the same semester to two completely different groups. On one hand, you had your typical university students with all the freedom in the world. And on the other, you had prisoners serving long sentences behind a whole series of locked gates.
And here is where it gets absolutely fascinating. The prisoners, they were the model students. They were incredibly disciplined, always asking these deep, thoughtful questions until they really, truly got it. They were so focused, so engaged, that they all ended up getting top grades, A's and B's across the board. Think about that. Despite being locked up, their minds were curious, they were engaged, and they were totally free to learn.
The whole thing went way beyond just academics. These students would actually boil tea for him over a charcoal fire, and they created this little community. And at the end of it all, they gave him a handmade gift with this message on it. It's just such a powerful window into their mindset, one of gratitude and hope, not bitterness or confinement.
So let's flip that coin. Let's see how this whole idea applies to the mental prisons that we built for ourselves. Because what Araya noticed is that just because you're physically on the outside, it doesn't automatically make you free.
And this contrast is just so important, right? The visible prisons have rules and gates, physical things holding you back. But the invisible ones, we build those ourselves, out of our own habits, our fears, our past traumas, and our resentments. And, as we're about to see, those walls can be just as tough to break through. Araya tells this story about a friend of his who was finally released after 2 years in prison. They meet up at a cafe, and at one point, his friend gets up to use the restroom. When he comes back, he says, this is the first time I have used a restroom without asking for permission. His body was totally free, but his mind was still following the rules of the prison.
And then there's this heartbreaking story of a brilliant, ethical manager who was unjustly forced out of his job. He was a good guy, built a great life for himself and his family. But 17 years later, he was still mentally trapped by that one event, just replaying it over and over in his head. He was physically free, but his mind was completely caged by resentment.
And that's the crucial point, isn't it? We can literally hold ourselves prisoner to things that happened ages ago. Bitterness, anger, the inability to just let go. These things can build walls around us that are every bit as real as iron bars. So, if our own minds can be prisons, how in the world do we find the keys to get out? Well, the answer might just lie in another one of Araya's classrooms, this one filled with young refugees. Starting around 2022, Araya began teaching another group of absolutely incredible students. These were young refugees who had spent years in camps, dealing with displacement, loss, and just unbelievable uncertainty, all just for the chance to be in that classroom. Just think about the challenges they were up against. We're talking extreme poverty, trauma, constant fear. Some of them were mothers, attending class while pregnant or even bringing their little kids with them. Just showing up to class every day was a massive act of courage. And yet, in that classroom, they found a key, a really powerful one: hope. For them, learning accounting wasn't just about numbers, it was a defiant act of believing in a better future. It was a way to mentally rise above their circumstances and start reclaiming their lives.
And they built this powerful community together. At the end of every semester, they'd hold these little tea ceremonies, sharing stories, supporting each other. That human connection, it became another key,
a constant reminder that they weren't alone in their struggle or in their journey toward real freedom.
You know, all these stories are so inspiring, but maybe the ultimate proof of this entire philosophy can be found in the author's own life story.
I mean, Araya's own journey is just a testament to incredible resilience. He grows up as a shepherd boy, literally studying his books out in the fields. He becomes an electrician by teaching himself from a 1,000-page handbook in a remote village with no internet, no phone. Then, after political turmoil forces him to leave everything behind, he starts his life all over again, goes to university, and becomes a highly qualified finance manager. His life is just a living, breathing example of this quote from his own work. He proves that our circumstances do not have to define who we are. With discipline and a relentless commitment to learning, we can overcome just about anything.
So, let's pull all these powerful lessons together. What does this all mean for us, right here, right now, in our own lives?
When you boil it all down, here are the keys to freedom that we've seen. The prisoners, they showed us the raw power of discipline. The author's own journey is a masterclass in resilience. The refugees showed us that hope is a choice, even in the darkest of times. And the manager's painful story, that teaches us how absolutely vital it is to learn to let go of the past.
And that brings us right to the core message. Real freedom, it's not about our external situation. It's an internal state of being. It's what happens inside our own minds when we choose to build up our resilience, to find hope, and to practice discipline, no matter what walls, visible or invisible, happen to be around us.
So the final question is really for you. We all have our own invisible prisons. Fear, resentment, self-doubt, you name it. The first step is just recognizing that your freedom starts and ends in your own mind. The only question left is, where will you start?